17th day in the month of July in the year of our Lord 2022. We are now 6 Sundays past Pentecost. Now, as they went on their way, he entered a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks, so she came to him and asked, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her then to help me." But the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her." The Gospel according to Luke chapter 10, verses 38 through 42. Sisters. I have 2 sisters. The first is the 3rd child in the birth line of my siblings and me. Her name is Pamela, because my mother and father thought it was an uncommonly pretty name for an uncommonly pretty child. My second sister is the baby of the 7 children born to my mother and father, and her name is Julia. She received that name as a calling to uphold the tradition of faithful women in our family on our mother's side. Julia is named after her mother and her mother's mother. All of them together represent 3 consecutive generations of Julias. And of the 3, only my sister Julie is still in the land of the living. I pray there will be many more to come. Just a few weeks ago, my 2 sisters had taken a cruise together throughout the Caribbean. My sister Pam reports that they had a fabulous time together, and especially because the cruise was the very first Pam had ever taken. She was nearly giddy with joy to feel the sea breeze against her cheek as she walked the promenade deck late in the evening. Each night she stared in wonder at moonlight cast on the rippling sea. Julia, for her part, enjoyed long walks on shore to see botanical gardens and the debris of old stone forts facing the silent blue-gray sea, that same sea across which Africans had been transported to be sold into slavery. Pam had a taste for shipboard entertainment, but Julia preferred the risk of pulling on the one-armed bandits in the casino. This was a point of the sharpest disagreement between my 2 sisters on the whole voyage. Pam could not fathom how it could be the least bit thrilling to throw money away on the improbable chance that Julie would ever win more than she lost. Julie, on the other hand, had preset her limit to lose at $100 just to feel the jolt of adrenaline every time the cherry balls rolled round. The cruise was theirs to enjoy together, but each chose the offerings best suited to her own taste. I am glad to say that my sisters took the cruise together because they enjoyed each other's company and because they could foresee that warm weather, pina coladas, and island music on steel drums would prove just the right intoxicant before they entered the world of toil and trouble once more. Both my sisters confessed that theirs is a relationship unlike any of the others they have with the 3 remaining brothers they share. Sisterhood is theirs, with its own ups and downs, its deep matters of sibling care, and the occasional mild irritation that comes over them when they feel the sting of some unspoken slight or grudge. Now, I am speculating about all of this, but I dare say I'm not too far off the mark. I know my sisters well, but here's the rub. They know me too. So when I saw that we had this all too familiar text concerning 2 sisters before us today, I I simply could not help but to think of my own two sisters. We are so well acquainted with Martha and Mary that we may suspect there simply is no more juice to be had out of this overripened story. Is there any chance we may have overlooked even the smallest detail in Luke's account of Jesus' visit to this house, as he calls it, in a certain village? Let's start with this. Martha invited Jesus to her home. How she came by possession of the dwelling is not shared with us, but it is hers. And because it is hers, she exercises the right to invite whomsoever she pleases. My mother loved to entertain. She had, as we say, a knack for it. She planned well in advance and thoughtfully considered her menu, the table coverings, the settings, the lighting, the music, the spacing of furniture, the invisible helps that aided in establishing the oh-so-right ambiance for whatever occasion and gathering she conceived. It was always an elaborate orchestration of all the accessories of hospitality to achieve a sense of sumptuous fellowship. Martha had this same instinct, I believe, for fashioning a welcome that charmed her visitors. She ushered them into comfort and graced them with fine crudité, savory canopies, and appetizing delicacies. And that's just the appetizers. I don't know about you, but I have a soft spot for Martha and her hurried, harried effort to prepare something special from her cupboard for a guest as honorable as one she called Lord. In the ancient world, to keep the law that Martha is attempting to fulfill is considered a mark of sophistication and civilized breeding. It distinguishes those who honor it as a people of dignity and worth. The law of hospitality is a law that protects and esteems the stranger and the friend. So I am rather taken with Martha. That is why I am stunned to hear Jesus rebuke her when she complains that Mary is failing to assist her in the final touches to the dressing and the fixings she is placing on the table. But Mary reminds me of my sister Pam, who attends my weekly Bible study with a keen anticipation of what she and I and all the other participants may learn together. I talk often with both my sisters, but I must confess that Julia is always on the move. She is bolting from one adventure to another, and I can never pin her down. Yesterday, the Caribbean. Tomorrow, Paris and Amsterdam. I pray for her in traveling mercies as she explores the whole wide world. I ain't mad at her. But Pam is my constant companion in phone calls nearly every day of the week. We race each other for coffee every morning before she checks in with me, or, as often occurs, before I check in with her. Our conversations involve the daily grind of congressional hearings, derelict Supreme Court decisions, art exhibits in Pittsburgh that focus on biblical themes like Judith, the Hebrew widow, beheading the Assyrian general Holofernes. And then we will fix our attention on family matters, by turns matters of bruising and brokenness, and matters of flourishing and triumph. Somebody in the family was murdered, but the circumstances are murky. Another child is working on a PhD and hopes to relocate abroad when all the work is completed. But more than all of that, Pam wants to explore matters concerning wisdom, spiritual insight, and the holiness of God. She is ravenous and thirsty all of the time, no matter how thrilled she is in any moment to be enlightened and saturated with God's presence. She's still hungry and thirsty all the time. She never tires of sending me the link for some compelling documentary she has consumed or some new book she has uncovered and devoured. Her curt command is that I watch or read what she recommends and then call her to discuss. Mary is just such a woman, sitting at Jesus' feet and hanging on his every word. She is rapt and utterly unmindful of her presence among all the men who may be in Jesus' company. Tradition dictates that she not be there, but she does not care about any of that. As for men in the house, Mary's brother Lazarus does not even so much as merit a mention in Luke's account of this episode. But Mary is riveted by Jesus' command of the scriptures, his voluminous recall of its many cross-references, its recondite narratives, its prophetic pronouncements, its shimmering overflow of poetic expression, and its powerful inducement to religious experience and the transformation of soul. Mary is not put off from listening to Jesus, even if tradition assigns her a role behind the scenes, that is to say, tending the hearth, the well, and the cutlery. This is a positioning so far behind the scenes that she would be invisible. But Mary is bold, outspoken, and inquisitive. She naturally pushes against all these artificial impediments that would block her access to Jesus, that would put her at another remove behind men before she could encounter God. Look there. Martha has been summoning Mary from behind the kitchen door. She motions to her desperately to help with the china and the crystal. But Mary is not ignoring Martha. She's oblivious to Martha's entreaties because she is riding the light beam of Jesus' festive serving of word, of image, of sign, of parable, and salvation. Earlier, I said I was taken with Martha, but I'm rather taken with Mary too. So I am anguished to see Martha at odds with her sister. I want to say to them, can't we work this thing out? I want them to be reconciled, and I want Jesus to eat and say, my, Sharon, Stephanie, Martha, girl, you put your foot in that meal. Now come taste and see how good the Lord can be. For the Son of Man came to serve and not to be served. But before we dismiss the contretemps between Mary and Martha, let us hear what Jesus says to Martha in response to her rather pushy insistence that Jesus compel Mary to help her. First, he calls Martha worried and distracted with many things. He diagnoses a spiritual attention deficit disorder in our girl, Martha. His reference to her fussing and bustling as many things is a scorcher. He does not even dignify them with proper names. Second, he says that Mary, on the other hand, has concentrated her whole focus on the one thing that truly matters, and that it will not be taken away from her. If God shows up, everything else stops. Be still. Do not start tidying up. God already tidied up creation when God separated the waters eons ago. Do not set a plate of delicate porcelain. God is a God of thunder who melts the mountains and makes the seas crash the shores. Do not prepare lamb, slice tomatoes, or bake a chicken. God is in the house. You have no time to spare for making a good impression. God does not care about silk doilies or cream in tea. or an aperitif. If God is in the house, God is there to bless the people who live in the house, to shine God's glory upon the timbers, the windows, the walls, and the spirit of the inhabitants too. Jesus wants to liberate Martha from sweating over that flaming hot stove. He wants her to receive the same blessing that Mary has claimed. And in the end, a sisterhood with Jesus at the center is like a cruise over open water with starlight in a darkened sky. I want Martha to untie her apron, smooth her hair, leave the dishes for Lazarus to wash, and take a seat beside her sister Mary as Jesus spreads the word like butter on the bread of life. Let the church say,